This podcast, brought to you by Anchor, is currently non-profit making and is based on the second edition coursebook on international history from 1870 to 1945 for Cambridge International AS Level History. Greetings, podcast listeners. In this episode, I'll be covering the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the Xi'an incident of 1936, the Japanese invasion of China, the Nationalist retreat to Sichuan, and how the war benefited the Chinese Communist Party. In 1931, the Japanese invaded the northern Chinese province of Manchuria, claiming that the Chinese had sabotaged a section of a railway owned by them. By 1932, they were able to conquer the region and renamed it Manchukuo. Chiang Kai-shek took little action to stop him due to the fact that he was preoccupied with the threat of the CCP. He actually ordered people not to resist the Japanese, as he feared a full-scale invasion. In fact, Chiang subsequently signed the Tangu Truce in May 1933, which certified Japanese ownership over the area. Despite the truce, Japanese raids into China continued. Chiang attempted to justify his lack of a response to the threat of Japan by saying, "The Japanese are a disease of the skin, it can be cured. The communists are a disease of the soul, it affects the whole body." He believed that national unity had to be achieved before attacking the Japanese. However, people were furious that he had not stood up to Japanese aggression and responded to the invasion of Manchuria. Let's move on to the Xi'an incident of 1936. Zhang Shiliang and Yang Hucheng were two Chinese warlords in Shanxi and Gansu. Chiang Kai-shek ordered them to carry out another extermination campaign against the communists. However, tensions were building between China and Japan, who had begun invading northern China. Zhang and Yang contacted the communists, setting up an armistice agreement and alliance with the Red Army against the Japanese invasion. Chiang Kai-shek was enraged by their actions, and October 22nd, he flew to Xi'an with the aim of convincing Zhang and Yang to hold back the Red Army. However, Chiang was kidnapped by Zhang's troops in December 1936 for a period of 2 weeks. It is believed that as part of the ultimatum for his release, he was forced to agree to a united front with the communists to fight a full-scale war against Japan. The communists were willing to do so, as the Soviets had persuaded them to unite with the Kuomintang against Japan, alongside military aid provided by the USSR. This is because Japan was considered a threat in the region, and that the USSR realized that helping China to fight Japan was the right thing and would benefit them in the long run anyway. 6 months later, the Japanese carried out a further invasion of China. Despite the united front, the Japanese armies were able to invade China easily. This is because they were more well-equipped with more advanced and modern weapons. In July 1937, the Japanese troops attacked the Chinese troops at the Marco Polo Bridge near the previous dynastic capital city of Beijing. It served as the capital from 1421 to 1912 upon the collapse of the Qing dynasty. This was the beginning of a full-scale war which lasted until 1945. Weakness in the nationalist government had made it easy for the Japanese to continue their conquests. Meanwhile, the communists relied heavily on less effective guerrilla tactics. In doing so, they were able to delay the Japanese expansion to a certain extent. By the beginning of 1938, 1 million Japanese troops had occupied many of China's ports, industrial and commercial areas, and major cities. As a result, Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang retreated to the mountainous province of Sichuan. By 1939, the extent of control that Japan had over China was vast, although Japan lacked influence to the whole of China, and the empire had many limits. One reason is because the country was large, so they were unable to control it effectively. Furthermore, they were particular about holding onto large cities, such as those with ports and airfields, rather than holding control over the entire country. This allowed the Chinese to move back into some areas and take control over the countryside. Overall, the war significantly benefited the Chinese Communist Party. Prior to the full-scale invasion in 1937, the Communists only controlled a 77,700 kilometer square area, which was inhabited by 2 million people, whereas by 1945 they controlled a 770,000 kilometer square area, inhabited by 95 million people. During the Sino-Japanese War and World War II, there was a break of full-scale civil war in China as they focused on fighting the Japanese as a united front. However, it resumed following the defeat of Japan. By 1949, the Communist Party was able to defeat Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang, forcing them to retreat to the island of Formosa, establishing the Nationalist government of Taiwan. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Please consider using the links in the description below to leave a voice message for me, leave feedback for me, or visit my website which hosts additional revision material. Depending on which app you are listening to this on, you could also rate and review the podcast. Thank you.